ready, you're live.
It's 5:05 and welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Tracking some national news this morning, Utah prosecutors have announced charges as well as the intent for them to seek the death penalty for and after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Those charges being levied against Tyler Robinson. Yesterday, in a press conference, Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray spoke during that news conference and announced that prosecutors in Utah County will be pursuing the death penalty against the 22-year-old man who is accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk back 1 week ago, last Wednesday, at Utah Valley University. Robinson appeared in a Utah court via a WebEx video link wearing a green Kevlar vest, facing 7 charges, including aggravated murder. That is the crime that is eligible for capital punishment in the state of Utah, which is one of 21 states that still has capital punishment on the books. The shooting occurred as Charlie Kirk, the co-founder of Turning Point USA and a very prominent voice on the conservative side of the aisle, was hosting one of his very popular campus tour college events 1 week ago in Utah. More than 3,000 people in the crowd when bullets rang out and Kirk was killed. According to prosecutors in the case, Robinson, the 22-year-old alleged shooter, his mother told authorities her son had been increasingly embracing left-wing ideology over the last couple of years, and the prosecutors detailed his romantic relationship with a transgender roommate. That is relevant because text messages between Robinson and the roommate revealed a confession and motive, with Robinson allegedly saying, according to prosecutors, quote, "I had enough of this hatred. Some hate cannot be negotiated out." Robinson also admitted to planning the attack for over a week and carved messages referencing Antifa and other subculture phrases and ideology into bullet casings and magazines, including things like "Hey Fascist Catch" and an Italian World War II anti-fascist song, "O Bella Ciao." He later described all of that in a text message as being, quote, "mostly a big meme." However, there was no meme in pulling the trigger and killing Charlie Kirk. The investigation gained momentum when Robinson's family recognized him in those FBI-released images released late last week by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and identified that the rifle had been in the family and originally had belonged to Robinson's grandfather. DNA evidence was recovered from the weapon and a towel used to wrap it up after the shooting took place. Robinson ditched it in the nearby woods, where it was then later combed over by local, state, and federal law enforcement and captured. Robinson initially thought and had planned to completely escape undetected. However, he did text his transgender roommate partner and talked about trying to grab the rifle and indicating that he had screwed up by not grabbing it earlier. FBI Director Kash Patel announced that in Tyler Robinson's Discord chat group is also under investigation. All participants in that are now part of an ongoing probe, as Robinson also communicated with multiple people in that chat room talking about the heinous, horrific act that he was at the hands of last Wednesday. Robinson also faces additional charges, including obstruction of justice for attempting to hide evidence and witness tampering for instructing his partner to, quote, delete their communication and remain silent if contacted by police. Utah County Judge Tony Graff appointed a public defender for Tyler Robinson, who is being obviously prosecuted here in the case. Utah maintains the death penalty and includes firing squads as an execution method, though only 2 inmates have been executed since 2010. That has been pretty standard in most of the 21 states where the death penalty does exist. Very few capital punishments actually playing out across the United States. We've seen some commentary from President Donald Trump in the last week as well, indicating that if the death penalty is on the table, Prosecutors should go after it, and according to Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray in his news conference yesterday, they will be seeking capital punishment in this case. First appearance taking place yesterday afternoon. Not immediately clear when that next court date is going to be taking place. However, we'll keep an eye on the details. Actually, looks like that is going to be taking place September the 29th. So coming up here in a couple of weeks when that next court hearing will take place. We'll keep an eye on all of the details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. North Carolina also making some national news as it relates to Charlie Kirk. Fox News running an article yesterday afternoon showing a situation unfolding at UNCW as individuals, not immediately clear whether they are students or not, took a light blue paint color and poured over a rock on campus known as the Spirit Rock that was painted with a tribute for Charlie Kirk. Students gathered on Monday night to honor Kirk at a vigil that was attended by more than 2,000 people, with that taking place yesterday morning and throughout yesterday afternoon. Groups of agitators on campus did attempt multiple times to deface the Spirit Rock, which had written on it, quote, "If you believe in something, you need to have the courage to fight those ideas, not run away from them and silence them." Signed and having the memorial to Charlie Kirk, 1993 to 2025. After multiple hours of students skipping class and standing by the rock to make sure that individuals did not pour paint on it. Well, that happened around 11 o'clock yesterday morning, getting some national coverage from Fox News showing this situation unfolding on campus as a group of about 3 or 4 individuals did pour some of that blue paint over the rock, getting some major attention from national news sources and on social media over the last 12 hours or so. Another unfortunate story that has brought North Carolina some national news. That coverage is available this morning over at Fox News. The headline there: University's Charlie Kirk tribute defaced as students hurl insult at supporters and call them lost souls. Obviously, it has been a busy, really busy 2 weeks or so here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, continuing to track a variety of stories, including the horrific murder of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte. That took over most of our coverage through the early parts of last week. And then, of course, as pretty much every other news outlet across the country transitioning to the Charlie Kirk story, we continue to track all of that, and we'll have continuing and additional coverage over on our website this morning at carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:13. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will head on over to the traffic center on your early Wednesday morning commute and get an update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you, Nick. Good Wednesday morning.
It's 5:20. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. You might be familiar with the name Wiley Nickel. Back earlier this year, Nickel announced his intention to run for United States Senate on the Democrat side of the aisle. Of course, a vacant seat now, which will be left by retiring Senator Thom Tillis. However, after former Governor Roy Cooper announced that he was jumping into the race, Wiley Nickel, who was a former representative in the House of Representatives, a Congress member out of the 13th Congressional District, he announced that he would be stepping back. And our news that we're tracking this morning over at CarolinaJournal.com shows that the former congressman has made his candidacy official for the office of Wake County District Attorney. He made the announcement on social media yesterday. Current District Attorney Lauren Freeman, a Democrat, announced earlier this year that she will not run for re-election in 2026. So the former congressman, then Senate candidate, now DA candidate, will look to take over that seat in Wake County in our state's capital. In July, there was speculation that he was considering a run for office after he dropped out of the United States Senate race and endorsed former Democrat Governor Roy Cooper for nomination when Cooper announced his official intention to run for the seat. Nickel said this in a video clip posted to social media yesterday, quote, "I'm running for Wake County District Attorney because the stakes for our community and our democracy have never been higher in this moment. With the president shredding the Constitution in the Oval Office, we need leaders who will stand up to protect our rights and keep our judicial system fair and independent. Listen, my time in Congress was cut short because Republicans gerrymandered, and I've got a lot of work left to do." Nickel also incredibly popular on social media as well, having some major social media followings in left-wing circles. No Republicans have entered the race thus far. That primary will take place in March. Candidate filing will open in early December of this year. Primary, if there needs to be one, in March, and of course the general election headed your way late next year. You can read some additional details on Wiley Nickel. We've got as well as coverage of his backstory, his time in Congress, his original announcement for the United States Senate. All of that available over on our website this morning, CarolinaJournal.com, with the headline story, "Nickel Announces Run for Wake County District Attorney." In some other statewide news this morning, some new data coming out from the United States Census Bureau shows that median household incomes in North Carolina stands at $73,958. That's from in 2024, according to census data. That compares to a median of more than $83,700 for the nation as a whole, according to those numbers. North Carolina's median household income in 2023 was $70,804, so about $3,000 more than the year prior. Nationally, the Bureau reported a slight decline in the official poverty rate up to 11%, about 35.9 million people, and said that 92% of the United States population had health insurance for at least as part of 2024. Private coverage remained more common than public coverage, 66 versus 36, with employer-sponsored insurance covering 54% of the population for some or all of the calendar year 2024. The findings come from 3 new Bureau reports. The official poverty rate in North Carolina was 13% in 2024, essentially unchanged from the year prior, and the 17th highest rate among states in the nation. Child poverty stood at 16%. That's the 15th highest nationwide. And the Bureau noted racial differences. Latino North Carolinians had the highest poverty rate at 20%, followed by Black residents at 19% and American Indian residents at 17%. Brian Balfour, the senior vice president of research at the John Locke Foundation, said, quote, "Unfortunately, too many North Carolinians continue to struggle with poverty. Research shows, however, a nearly surefire way to escape it. Those who follow the so-called success sequence, which involves staying in school, waiting until marriage to have children, and working full-time, will escape poverty 97% of the time. Similarly, high rates are enjoyed by those who grew up poor and across races. Moreover, children in North Carolina living in single-parent homes are 5 times more likely to live in poverty than those with 2 parents. Policymakers concerned with poverty would be wise to take those facts into consideration. While income and poverty rates were and remained largely flat, North Carolina was one of only 2 states to see measurable increases in Medicaid coverage in 2024. According to the report, the state's uninsured rate fell from 9.4% in 2023 to 8.6% in 2024. That's statistically a very significant drop. The census attributed the improvement primarily to the state's Medicaid expansion, which increased the state's Medicaid coverage rate by about 1 percentage point to 20%. Obviously, the lawmakers in Raleigh over the last couple of years working through Medicaid expansion. It was fully rolled out for the last calendar year, and those numbers were absolutely detected in this data from the United States Census. However, coverage trends varied across the country. The national uninsured rate was stable at 8%, even though it rose significantly in 18 states, and the District of Columbia, North Carolina's improvement, stood in contrast to those increases and that national pattern. Between 2023 and 2024, median incomes rose 5% for Asian American households, 6% for Hispanic households, while it fell 3% for African American households. Median income did not change significantly from white households in general or for white non-Hispanic households either. At the top end, household income at the 90th percentile increased 4%, while the 10th and 50th percentile showed no significant change. The national poverty rate slightly decreased by 0.4 percentage points to 10.6%, translating to approximately 35.9 million people living in poverty. The supplemental poverty measure was noted at 12.9%, also indicating no significant change from the previous year. The Census Bureau also released a housing report showing shelter costs continuing to rise in 2024. That's an issue all across the country. No real shock there. Median monthly owner costs for homeowners with a mortgage rose to over $2,000, $2,035 a month, up almost 4% from the year prior, driven mainly by higher mortgages and insurance costs. The median share of income spent by mortgaged homeowners was 21.5%, with more than half of owned homes at 60% having a mortgage payment. While the number of homes owned free and clear increased by about 900,000 in the 2024 calendar year, median monthly condo and HOA fees were up, and you saw some of those big-time increases in states like Nevada, Florida, and Arizona. Rents also rose as the median gross rent increased by almost 3% to more than $1,400 nationwide in 2024, though the median share of income spent on rent remained at 31%. Some very interesting data in this report. Obviously, a lot of numbers that we're going through this morning. We've got a full link to all of the articles and all of those reports from the Census Bureau over on our website this morning, carolinajournal.com. That story's headline: NC median household income reaches $74,000 in 2024. You can read that at carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:29 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get another look at the roadways on your Wednesday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Good.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Utah prosecutors in a press conference yesterday announced that they are pursuing the death penalty against 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, the man that is accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk during a campus event, 1 week ago today at Utah Valley University. Robinson also made his first court appearance yesterday afternoon via WebEx wearing a green Kevlar vest. He is facing 7 charges. The one that does include the potential for capital punishment is aggravated murder, which the Utah County attorney, I should say, in Jeff Gray did announce that they would be seeking in this case. According to prosecutors, Robinson's mother had told authorities that her son, the 22-year-old alleged shooter, had increasingly embraced left-wing ideology over the last couple of years and was dating his transgender roommate, who he exchanged text messages with both before, during, and seemingly after the shooting, saying at one point, quote, I have had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out, in referencing Charlie Kirk. He would then go on to, of course, murder Kirk at Utah Valley University yesterday. Robinson also admitted to planning the attacks over a several-week span of time, carved messages referencing Antifa and other subcultures into bullet casings. And with that, Robinson's family did recognize him from those released images by the FBI late last week, called their son, and was able to, they were successful and able to finally convince him to turn himself into authorities, which he did in fact do late last Thursday night around 10 p.m. local time in Utah. With that, there are 6 other charges that are being sought out by the Utah Valley, the Utah County, I should say, attorney in Jeff Gray and prosecutors in this case. There is another court hearing that is scheduled for September the 29th, as Utah remains one of 21 states that does have the death penalty, including firing squad as an execution method. Important to note, however, there have only been 2 inmates executed in the state of Utah since 2010. So while folks may get the death penalty, it is not a very common thing in the state of Utah. We continue our coverage of that story this morning here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:38. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Earlier this year, the city of Charlotte and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Chief Johnny Jennings were in the news after it was reported that there was a more than $300,000 settlement between the city and the chief. State Auditor Dave Boliek has begun an investigation into that. To walk us through some of those details this morning and a new report out of the auditor's office, Teresa Opeka, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. $300,000 settlement for a police chief already making a pretty hefty salary in the city of Charlotte. Teresa, did raise a lot of eyebrows earlier this year. What are you learning from the auditor's office this morning?
Sure. Good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me. So Auditor Boliek released that report on that, for lack of a better term, it was a secret agreement because, right, nobody knew about it. The city council and the mayor of Charlotte kept that quiet until, it was found out. So Auditor Boliek did release a special report. And what he said is that the investigation's objectives were to determine circumstances and sources of funding for that payment and to determine whether the city's actions complied with state laws, specifically North Carolina's Public Records Act and the North Carolina Open Meetings Law and other applicable laws. So what he said his office investigations found was of the total payment, $280,000 came from the city's general fund and $25,000 came from the risk management fund. Now that fund typically is used to pay claims against the city, and that had a total of $27.4 million in expenses for fiscal year 2024. Also, the agreement's text revealed the city's payments to Jennings included severance pay, additional vacation days, retention bonuses, merit-based salary increase, and also a reimbursement for legal expenses. We all have it all broken down in the article, but basically the auditor said the payment was kept from the public until he requested Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles disclose the amount. 5 days later, then Jennings announced his upcoming retirement and released the information about the agreement. And again, we do have a breakdown of the settlement in our story this morning.
Yeah, and Teresa, maybe a little backstory. I know our audience here in Charlotte is probably familiar with it, but maybe for some that are not, there was some rumor that Johnny Jennings was going to sue the city of Charlotte. Then after that alleged threat was made, and again, a lot of this is maybe uncorroborated, but after that alleged threat was made, this payment was not disclosed publicly, but was able to be obtained by some members of the Charlotte media, including WBT Radio, who were one of the first to report on that. The settlement comes out, and it's a large chunk of change. And you also talk about some of the vacation time and other salary equivalent benefits that the chief did receive from this. This is a huge issue of public transparency, Teresa.
Oh, absolutely. You're talking that much, thousands of dollars, and it's being kept from the public. It's all with, city funds, city taxpayers are paying this money. It absolutely is a matter of transparency, a pretty important one at that.
When you talk about that, the vast majority of this money coming from the general fund, as I understand it, Teresa, that's essentially like a government's savings account or checking accounts where they kind of store money that they use for a variety of issues that may exist and come up throughout the year.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then we look at this mitigation fund. Presumably that's if the city is involved in any litigation, they're sued by somebody or something like that. But in this case, there was no actual lawsuit filed, at least not that we're aware of, filed against the city of Charlotte. Was there any disclosure as to why they were able to use money from that fund for some of these payouts?
Well, if we're looking through what we had, the city confirmed the expenditures from the general fund. They weren't anticipated or included in the city's adopted fiscal year 2025 budget. But the city stated the costs were covered through other operational savings realized during the fiscal year. And also the city stated there are no internal document existed to show that the $175,000 severance payment was specifically included in the city's adopted 2026 budget for the fiscal year of 2026, as the settlement agreement had not been approved when the budget was proposed. But the city determined that it was not required to pass a budget amendment to reflect the upcoming severance payment. Report said it appears that Charlotte City Council voted to settle with Jennings sometime between the closed sessions held somewhere between April 28th and May 5th in order to avoid litigation related to text messages he received from a former Charlotte City councilman. And on May 8th, the city officially entered into that settlement with Jennings. So that's a little more of the information we have in the story.
One of the things that State Auditor Dave Boliek has really prided himself on since getting into that office earlier this year, of course, winning his election back last November, is shining a light and bringing a level of transparency, Teresa, to any size government, whether we're talking about a small school district or something like the North Carolina Department of Transportation, DMV. Of course, now this morning talking about the city of Charlotte. He's been pretty hell-bent on doing that and seems to indicate and give some recommendations in the vast majority of his reports. Any recommendations out of the auditor's office after this $300,000+ payment earlier this year?
Sure. Yeah, he definitely wants to shine a light. He's calling himself a watchdog when it comes to all of this. He had some recommendations. Of course, we're talking about transparency, improved transparency in settlement reporting, also timely release of closed session minutes, and also to reevaluate the use of the general fund for settlement payments. He said they launched the investigation because the people of Charlotte deserve to know how their money is being spent. And he also said, this is the people's money and it shouldn't be kept behind closed doors. Our report brought transparency to the city of Charlotte. But however, as shown in the mayor's response, city leadership doesn't share our interest in being open and transparent about spending the people's money. That's a direct quote from Auditor Dave Boliek.
Obviously very frustrating for the taxpayers and residents in the city of Charlotte and the greater Mecklenburg County area. We've got a link this morning including all of the numbers and figures, including a full link to that special report from State Auditor Dave Boliek's office. That's available over on our website this morning, carolinajournal.com. We appreciate the details. Teresa Opeka joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:45, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center on your Wednesday morning commute and get an update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. A disabled
It's time for the 6th annual WBT Little Heroes Blood Drive. Tomorrow, Thursday, September the 18th, WBT and the One Blood Big Red Bus will be at Watson Insurance in Belmont from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and we're encouraging you to make an appointment to make a life-saving blood donation. The 6th annual WBT Little Heroes Blood Drive continues tomorrow, Thursday, September the 18th at Watson Insurance in Belmont. Visit WBT.com this morning for location details and to make sure that you can register your appointment. Good morning again, 5:52. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Democrat Governor Josh Stein will be in Washington, D.C. throughout the day today, requesting, as he announced earlier this week, an additional $13.5 billion from the federal government, as next week will mark 1 year since Hurricane Helene devastated the western half of North Carolina. The governor talked about the importance of getting some of those federal funds to flow into the state at a press conference on Monday.
We are grateful for every federal dollar that we have received because it brings us closer to recovery. But we need more help. The next stage of recovery is going to require a new commitment from Congress and from the administration to not forget the people of Western North Carolina. Western North Carolina has not received anywhere near what it needs, nor our fair share. So far, North Carolina has received or been awarded federal funding equivalent to about 9% of the total damage that Helene caused. States that were similarly devastated following Hurricanes Katrina, Maria, or Sandy saw 70% of their damages covered by federal funding. The average is typically between 40 and 50% of total damage in federal relief dollars. Today, I am making a new request of Congress for an additional $13.5 billion in recovery assistance. And I'll be headed to Washington on Wednesday for meetings to further this request to our federal partners.
That's Governor Josh Stein earlier in the week. That press conference taking place at Blue Ridge Community College and their Technology Education and Development Center in Flat Rock. That is in Henderson County, where the governor did make that push for an additional $13.5 billion, noting that he will be heading to Washington, D.C. today. It's not immediately clear who the governor is going to be meeting with. President Trump off the table. He is over in the UK this morning on a state visit, but probably a pretty strong likelihood there will be administration officials in whatever meetings are going to be taking place. The governor noted that roughly 74,000 homes were destroyed by Helene, very few of which had flood insurance, and 96% of small businesses in the area reported some, whether they were minor or major, but some impacts from the storm. With 6 out of 7 people not reaching with 6 out of 7 of those stores, small businesses, not reaching their pre-Helene revenues, he noted that Western North Carolina's economy relies heavily on the strength of small businesses, including the massive tourism industry in the western half of our state. He's also requesting additional money from HUD as the Community Development Block Grant for Disaster Recovery, also known as a CDBGDR grant, an additional $8 billion he is requesting to help rebuilding homes, help small businesses, as well as repairing infrastructure to make sure that they are complete and are more prone, God forbid, another storm like Helene should affect the western half of our state once again, as we do remain in the middle of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. The governor focused, of course, in on infrastructure as well. In the immediate aftermath of the storm, you had more than 5,000 miles of state-maintained roads, as well as many private driveways and bridges that were either partially or completely destroyed. And fortunately, as of this morning, 97% of that 5,000 miles of those state-maintained roads were reopened and are operating at least in some capacity, including Interstate 40, which has reopened between the North Carolina and Tennessee border. However, those are temporary reopenings and temporary repairs that were put in place, meaning that the speed limits in some areas of Interstate 40 in the mountains are just 25, 35 miles an hour, one lane in each direction. A lot of truck and tractor trailer traffic through those areas. So while the road is open, yes, it is not at its normal capacity, and it does cause some major delays and can really slow down a trip west or east on Interstate 40 out near the Tennessee line. That is also something that he is hoping to get some additional support from the federal government on. Important to note here in North Carolina, more than $1 billion has already been passed and approved by the North Carolina General Assembly. We'll track the governor's visit in Washington, D.C. today and provide any additional coverage and detail over on our website, carolinajournal.com, and right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. That's going to do it for a Wednesday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.